turn was made.
You can't get nothing past you, can we?
Well, I gave him the heads up.
Let me just tell you that it has long been, and I think you've heard me say this, it has long been my assertion that one of the most entertaining places on earth to sit was right there on that corner. It was before we turned Spring Cannon 2 ways, but even still now, that is the most entertaining corner on earth with all the stuff that goes on. It's amazing to me that that doesn't happen every day. But since we went 2 ways, it's calmed it a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you sit right there at Five Loaves and you right there on the little bench in front and you for 20 minutes waiting for a table, you can see more crazy stuff you've ever seen in your life. Apparently today was whatever that was.
Yeah, I think still waiting for Tom O'Brien to give a report out on that. But for us, it took out a traffic control box there at that intersection.
Yeah.
So Dominion, I don't have I was waiting for a text from our crews that are out there. Dominion has to set up a new pole, and thankfully we've tried to keep a practice of keeping some of extras of our stuff. So we already have traffic control cabinets that are at the warehouse parish, if I'm correct, and so we're able to work on those pieces. But our folk immediately responded out there, and but yeah,
it looked like somebody had a moment of terror.
I came late to the story. What actually happened?
A little wreck on Cumming Street or Cannon Street. It's hard to tell whether it was Cannon. Looks like
this is
it's
Five Lobes is Cannon, yeah.
I just want to let y'all know we are on YouTube right now, and Matt, I see where you are signed on, but it doesn't look like you have audio.
Talk about Matt Moldenauer?
Yes.
I see him.
He might be calling in on a phone number.
No, he's there.
He's right there.
I see him, but
he doesn't have audio.
Okay.
Matt, say something.
Okay.
I'm just heard
calling
you
in on audio, but you can see my face.
Oh,
gotcha.
okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. So your audio's on the phone. Okay.
Not.
Right.
All right. So we're just missing the mayor. Any word on him?
He's signing on now.
Okay. Nice work. Hang on one sec.
And then Councilman, I wanted to make sure Edmund Most was on.
I see him.
Okay.
Well, at least I did see him. He's right in the middle of Hollywood Squares.
Yeah, both Jason and I are here.
Okay, cool.
You're right next to each other. Look at that. Okay, I think we've got everybody, right? Perfect. All right, you all ready to roll? I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, July 14th, 2020 meeting of the City of Charleston Traffic and Transportation Committee. Thank everybody for being here. We've got a full agenda, and I'd like to ask Council Member Jackson if she would lead us an invocation or a moment of silence, please.
Thank you. Yes. Lord, we ask that you be with us for this meeting of deliberation and understanding the ideas and the suggestions, especially from our citizens. We're grateful for each mind that puts itself to the task of making our city a better place to live, work, and play. So give us clear minds and continue to protect those who are in danger in the places that we all know are the front line of those who are needing their help to get through the virus. In your name we pray. Amen.
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 Okay, thank you very much. First order of business is approval of minutes from May 26, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, additions, deletions? Everyone get it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next on our agenda is a Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee report on open streets. For those of you who do not know him, and he's here somewhere on my Hollywood Squares, Matt Moldenauer is the co-chair of the Bike Ped Committee and an incredibly conscientious member of not just that committee, but of our community. Along with me, he co-chairs it. If you all remember, at the suggestion of Councilmember Brady, voted on unanimously by this committee, we sent open streets as a discussion point to the Bike Ped Committee, and we have met on a number of occasions for many hours and have come up with a series of recommendations. So I don't know if you all have seen it, but Matt wrote a letter to this committee. I think it's addressed to all of us about the results of where we are so far. And we have elected him unanimously to give back the report from the committee. And we'll see where we go from there. So unless there's any questions, I'm going to turn this over to Matt. Matt, we've got a pretty full calendar and agenda and some things behind us. So without rushing you, I'm going to ask you to keep it succinct, if you don't mind.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I think we need to thank the entire committee, as you've done, for helping to prepare this memo. I'm thankful to be here representing them. I can honestly keep it quick. Last time I presented to this group, we actually had a PowerPoint. This time we just have this memo, which has some attachments provided by staff. I'm sure you've all reviewed it in detail. It addresses three pretty simple points that were developed in response to coronavirus. One being the open street concept that you mentioned. That would be opening South Market Street between Church Street and State Street. And another would be approving a temporary parklet pilot program. So if you don't know what parklets are, they're essentially imagining a parallel parking space that is temporarily set up with seating options. It's another way of providing more real estate for businesses to spread out customers. And then the third was asking staff to study providing bike facilities on Wentworth Street, as it is east-west bike route across the peninsula. The memo provides some justification for these. As you mentioned, there's been a lot of deliberation, including exactly how these items were worded. There's equity is an important issue. And then also top of mind with that is how we enable our local businesses to survive throughout the epidemic. And so we proposed some details in here, items such as specific hours, maybe variable, but those were recommended in consultation with staff, and also in consultation with local business owners. So, you know, I think it's worthy to have discussion about these items. Certainly, the committee encourages this committee and council to take on the concepts of providing open streets for businesses. In other words, closing them off to vehicular traffic and definitely opening them up to pedestrian and bicycle use. That would be one way to get people outdoors and spread out. We encourage the committee to consider parklets, at least temporarily, as a means of spreading people out, and then also studying opportunities to get people on the street and bikes. So, you know, I guess at this point, I would ask if there's any specific questions that people didn't feel weren't covered by the memo, and either I or staff can expound on those questions.
Any questions for Mr. Moldenauer? Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you. I really appreciate your thoughtful, list of items. That I like the variety. I think, especially if we're looking at this as something that is piloting a variety of ideas that work in other communities. So having a mix of things for us to try is really great. I was wondering if you had some examples of the kinds of bicycle facility improvements you would recommend for Wentworth.
Well, so I can speak to that if you like, because that actually came from me, perhaps. One of the things we've talked about on Wentworth Street, there's no east-west connected point between King and Meeting Street. And Wentworth Street from Meeting to King is one way to the west. So what we talked about was making a two-way, for lack of a better word, cyclotrack on the southern lane for bicycles to be able to commute across Wentworth Street on that southern lane. Mm-hmm. And then there are some, and I know Keith will jump in here, there's some complications with that at the terminus of either end of that. But it seemed to us like a pretty low-hanging fruit there to allow for east-west travel across the peninsula that's currently cut off on a main thoroughfare and artery.
So just to put it in my own layperson's terms, you're talking about taking one lane of Wentworth Street and making it basically an on-the-street bikeway, two-way
Two-way
bikeway.
Correct.
Right.
Councilmember Jackson, in this memo, we kind of kept it vague intentionally because we know there may be some variables out there that or city staff rather, haven't fully studied yet. So the request in the memo is to simply study it as a first pass to understand what options may be available.
Yeah, the only other piece I'll add, Councilmember Jackson, is that part of the conversation at the Bike Ped Committee was, what can be piloted? And so you're talking about something temporary, and not necessarily the infrastructure that's usually considered for whether it's, a cycle track or something else. And so even though it definitely is a connection route that should be looked into, you have a number of conflicts for if there was permanent infrastructure there, entryways to the side of the hotel and also the garage, and then also the fact that you have the turn lane movements. And so there's a specific way you design cycle tracks to accommodate the vehicular turn movements along with the cycle track itself. And so I think part of what was proposed within the Bike Ped Committee's piece about the study, if there was to be one, obviously there has to be funding in those particular pieces, is what would be appropriate, right? Is it appropriate that it's currently one way and on either side it's two way, right? And is that taken consideration with share of market, whatever that might be? But in temporary form, there, at least from a city staff standpoint, there was just some concerns about particular conflicts. And if you want to introduce that infrastructure, you want to introduce it in a way that people feel like welcomes them to the place and that they can make it in a safe way.
Any other questions for Mr. Moldenauer? So just really briefly, I don't know if there's any other members of the committee that are on this call. I see some phone numbers I don't recognize, but I do want to thank them. We actually worked really hard on this. And what I will tell you, the south end of the market was a unanimous and very popular program to try. And Ms. Thompson, Meg Thompson, has gone out and talked to business owners, the land-based business owners, the brick and mortar business owners, and it, I think, has gotten essentially unanimous support in that area. So that seems to be the most achievable and readily implementable pilot of all the three that are out there. So that's where we are. We're going to continue to work. We'll have another meeting next month, and we'll continue to report back.
Can I say one more thing, Councilmember?
Yeah, of course.
The park, I kind of glossed over the parklets item, and I don't want to discount that as a valid pilot project or program. Staff worked hard at developing a draft protocol on how that would work, and that would be similar to the curbside pickup program that's been implemented. And it essentially puts most of the onus on the business owner, that if the business owner felt like they needed additional real estate or space to spread out their tables or racks or what have you, that there is a program that they could follow, in other words, a list of criteria that they could follow in order to implement what is essentially a self-policing program to capture that parallel parking space near their business. So it encouraged the committee to take that into consideration.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Councilman Chair. Just more so than just the suggestion that's come from the committee, we do ask the committee for direction as to how to move and which other direction, the recommendations or all of the recommendations, whichever you all choose, are ones that we as city staff work to coordinate with the Bike Ped Committee on. I think that's part of the reason why we wanted to do the due diligence of putting together recommendations for you all. So I do think that, just speaking on behalf of city staff, we are looking for direction as to how to move forward and which of these recommendations or all the recommendations we should be moving forward on.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, I think said Chairman, about the, the committee will continue to refine or relook, or maybe even add a couple other suggestions and bring it back, or next month and bring it back to T&T. I'm just aware of our summer schedule. We're only going to have one city council meeting in August. I'm assuming that'll be the third Tuesday. And knowing that these are temporary and we're trying to, find the sweet spot of timing for how we're trying to encourage business without making it unsafe. I was hoping that we could have something that we could actually implement, at the end of the summer or after we would take our vote in August.
Well,
So
I might have
does-
misspoken when I said that. I did not really mean on these three items. I think the committee has done all it's going to do on these three items in terms of a recommendation in the memo that's come forward from Matt and the committee. It's now left to this committee to try to move this forward and give direction to Mr. Benjamin and his team as to how to proceed. When I said expand and continue, I think that we'll look at other options, but I don't think that we as a committee are looking for this to come back to the committee. This needs to come through this committee with a recommendation through council on how to proceed. And I think that's what I've heard Mr. Benjamin ask us to do. And I think that's what we as a committee envisioned happening today.
Yes, sir.
Well, then would you like to entertain a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we authorize at least the South Market? And I personally would make the motion that we authorize all three of these good ideas to be studied as much as needed by the staff, and then come back to T&T at our July 28 meeting so we could take a vote at or do we have to take a vote at council? I guess we do, right? So.
Well, as you know, it's the dream of every chair of every committee to entertain motions. So thank you. I think there's a motion to move these three forward to the next phase with Mr. Benjamin. Does that sound like a fair motion?
Second.
Yes.
Okay, and I heard a second. Was that Councilmember Brady?
It was.
And I saw the mayor had his hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest before the motion was made, try to do the easier ones first, or the ones that have the most consensus on. It seems like South Market Street is one of those. And in addition to the aspect of creating a better pedestrian space, I just thought I'd remind everyone we had the issue of how to reopen the market with COVID-19, and that's been a real challenge. So having that additional pedestrian space alongside part of the market would also serve that third purpose or fourth purpose of allowing a better exposure for some of the vendors down there. And then it would seem to me the next easiest thing to do would be the parklet idea, particularly for the locations where we had already reserved and still reserve parking spaces for customer pickup and take-home service, from the restaurants. And since we reopened the interiors of restaurants, they still have, in many cases, those reserved parking spaces. Maybe rather than reserving those spaces for, pickup, they could become parklets instead, and not lose any more parking spaces, but put them to better use in a way. And then, but I think the third one, I might be mistaken, the Wentworth Street one is a little more difficult. It needs more, a little more study and impact on parking and otherwise.
So, yeah, at the risk of saying something that my co-chair or my director doesn't agree with, I think, Mayor, sort of way you summarized it, the actionable item was the South Market item. I think Wentworth Street, we asked Mr. Benjamin to go talk to the DOT and study that one.
Right.
And then same thing with the parklets. I do want to make sure that the committee is aware that on the parklet recommendation, and it's in the memo, that one of the corridors we accepted from this pilot program was King Street. Just so everyone's aware of that. So I think as the motion stands right now, Mr. Mayor, as I understand it, it's to move forward on all three of these as presented, which would be to do everything we can to put South Market in play, to do some study through DOT and Mr. Benjamin's office on Wentworth Street, because we understand there are some complications, and the same thing with the parklets.
All right. Sounds good.
Am I correct about that, either Matt or Mr. Benjamin?
Yes, sir. The only other piece I would add on the parklet part is the Civic Design Center did a good job of trying to condense the design aspects for temporary parklets. As city staff, there's a preference of kind of jumping into what would be permanent parklets, just because of how we can wrap our arms around what design looks like, liabilities look like, and all those pieces. I will say that to move the parklet piece forward, kind of the two steps that we would have to do internally is to just refine the design aspects, just make sure we're with that. From a permitting standpoint, we would probably use our existing street blocking permit that we already have at TNT for the usage of the public right of way. And then the other part of it is that because as planning, and I don't know if any Jacob or planning staff are on, but because of parking regulations and expectations for businesses and those who occupy those parcels, there would have to be some temporary changes within ordinance structure to allow those parklets to function in that way. So those are just pieces that on the parklet side, we'd have to refine internally and come back to you all on. South Market is one that we could, technically do as soon as we can get our internal staff together. And the market vendors have said that this was something that they were hoping we could be able to introduce.
Right. So with that, and Alan Davis has done an incredible job with that. So thank you to him for all his hard work. So I think Councilmember Jackson, in the spirit of what you had moved and where we are, that's kind of the way it sets up. We'll present to council that it's really a go move forward on South Market, and then a move, study, and report back on the other two.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Thank you.
I'm going to give Councilmember Brady a quick shot here before we vote, just because this was his brainchild from the get-go.
Yeah, no, I mean, the committee's done an incredible job. And these were kind of the three recommendations, South Market being the actionable, like kind of immediate one, the parklet one helping to give businesses some relief in terms of expandable capacity, both for restaurants and also giving retailers the opportunity to bring whether they wanted merchandise outside. And we knew Wentworth was going to be a little bit of a stretch, but like John F. Kennedy said, we do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And I think it's important that we kind of dream big as well. And that was, one of the things for the committee was looking at in these type of times in open street concepts, increasing the bike connectivity. So yep. I'm in support of it as well. I'll be voting in favor.
Okay, any more discussion on the motion and second to move these three recommendations forward to council for approval and then on to Mr. Benjamin? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. And Matt, thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Matt.
A citizen who really has thrown himself at this. We appreciate your hard work very much. Okay, next, signal maintenance and projects update. Oh, where is he?
Yes.
I saw him. Troy.
Let me introduce this for 2 seconds. A couple of months ago, we had Troy in front of you all. Troy is our signal division manager and been part of the city for over 3 decades, helping us stay afloat in our traffic areas. And a couple months ago, we presented to you all projects and otherwise that we're working on. As a reminder, we are tasked with operating and maintaining the signal system in the city on behalf of the state DOT. We get a lump sum payment every year to be able to do that particular work of the maintenance and operations, but it also opens the door for potential projects as well. And so because there's a lot going on, we just did a project prioritization process for about 2-3 hours just a couple of weeks ago with the team. And so wanted him to come back and give you all a quick rundown of things that are happening. I'm gonna jump out there also and introduce Parrish Brown as well, who's been with the city also for over 30 years. He's now our assistant signals manager. He's amazing, and unfortunately a Cowboys fan. But beyond that, he's awesome, and we're glad that we have the opportunity for him to elevate into the position. So I'll pass it on to Troy.
Well, welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here this afternoon. All right, Troy, you on?
All right. Good afternoon. I'm going to try to go through this as quick as possible. If I make any mistakes, I hope Keith will back me up on this. So as he said, we met earlier this year, but I'm going to give an update on these projects since we had our mid-year meeting. So these are projects for 2020. The Farley Road, I'm gonna start with DOT projects that's fully funded by them. The Farley Road at Formosa, the update on that is that all the signal design and studies have been handed off to DOT. Spoke with them on last week. They're going to try to let this project this year, and it's a joint effort between us. It started as a part of their annual signal federal rebuild project. We approached them about adding mast arms and also improving the pedestrian aspect and the left turn operations at that intersection. They have agreed with us, and so the portion that we're going to be responsible for is the mast arm. And hopefully we can get this completed by the end of this year, but we're working with them to let the project. Okay. Next, we have the intersection improvement project along with the I-526. The project got slowed down because of COVID-19. The contractors was pulled off of the project, but they returned on June 8th. Basically, they're going to continue with the improvements down 17 with traffic signal operations, flashing yellow arrows, pedestrian improvements where added legs will be added, push buttons, and improvements of the crosswalks. Along with that, they have picked strategic locations for battery backups. So when we lose power, those locations will stay afloat for approximately 2.5 hours without power. Also, we're trying to close on the end of the traffic responsive. The contractor has returned, and we're going to install the communication infrastructure, which is wireless radios. Once we have that in, we will get back with DOT and move forward to try to get the traffic responsive in before December this year. Damaged vehicle loops is just our yearly maintenance that we have to do per DOT in accordance with the SMA. Pedestrian improvement project. This is a joint effort between the DOT and us again, where we provided the design for 10 locations on the peninsula to be upgraded with pedestrian signals, added legs, improved crosswalks. And it was completed in April with these 10 locations, and part of them, some of these locations was within your district, council member, that we completed in April.
Great.
We will move forward with city projects using the SMA funds. The intersection improvements, upgrades to left turn arrows. As again, Keith mentioned, we met at mid-year, and we have brought on Kimley Horn and Associates to do the studies to try to implement flashing yellow arrows at the location of US 17 at Farm Field and Lockwood Drive at Calhoun Street. So in September, they will begin to do the actual field counts and begin the designs for the intersection. The Meeting Street at Brigade Street intersection improvement project. I'm going to let Keith take that one, if you would.
So just 2 seconds of reminder on this one. This is a partnership with the state DOT. Originally, it was going to be a trial period, and really had to, the outside stakeholders, our advocacy groups really pushed, and this became an actual project. Brigade Street, the entirety of Brigade Street is on the resurfacing list for SCDOT. And so the city is bringing dollars to the table with the state DOT to introduce what hopefully be first protected bike infrastructure in the city's history. And so they're tailing when those projects for resurfacings are let. They usually give the contractor the full list of streets and say, go make it happen. And so we've worked with the state DOT to have Brigade Street on the tail end of their process, which will be in October. So we can make sure that when the project's executed, that it works together in full. So we're looking at that project being completed this year. The community had asked for the bus stop at Brigade and Meeting Street to be moved, primarily again because of the amount of accidents we have at that intersection, line of sight issues, and some safety aspects. And so actually working with, because of the transit accommodations ordinance that you all passed, working with development up the street on Meeting to be able to have that transferred there and coordinating with Carter on that as well. So that project's going to have some drainage improvements. That project's going to have some bulb outs, some rapid beacon flashers at Meeting and Brigade, and also have it protected throughout. So that piece is encouraging there.
Oh, Keith, thank you for that. I did find a document that I can share my screen with you all, and you can be able to follow me while I go through these actual projects that the Signal Maintenance Division is part of. Next, we're going to move with the cybersecurity. With all of the new technology and upgrades that we're making to our signal system and the equipment we're installing out in the field, it's been noted that keys for these cabinets can be purchased off of eBay, and anybody can get into those cabinets and gain entry. So we're starting this project where we're going to install cybersecurity at the cabinets, traffic cabinets with these electronic keys, and at individual intersections, and at our hub cabinets where we have these layer 3 switches, we will have scan card protection. And what this would show is that anybody that logs in, we'll be able to see them. The keys can only enter the cabinets unless they're programmed. If not programmed, you cannot enter. And this would be good for even when we have contractors to come in and do work for the city. We will begin the installation and training of this in August. There will be, the vendor will be here to provide training to the staff. The communication infrastructure project is the continuation of the project to upgrade our communication infrastructure of twisted copper pair to fiber. The area that we're going to be working on is on Calhoun Street from Courtney all the way to Washington Street. This gives us the ability to upgrade all of our traffic controllers to the advanced traffic controllers. Better communication means a better operation of the overall system. But just to provide a little bit of history, this goes all the way back to 2009 when the city of Charleston approached DOT with this type of technology to upgrade the twisted copper pair, which is approximately about 20 years old, and it's beginning to break down and be obsolete. But with the installation of this, we'll be able to provide more pedestrian protection with the advanced walk, or even the all pedestrian phase. And also it would help with the low country rapid transit bus system, because the type of equipment that we're installing is very robust for the bus rapid transit.
And sure, let me say one thing on that. Two pieces. One is, as you know, because you've seen it in the media, Calhoun is one of the road safety audit corridors, and there were some significant suggestions there that the city participated in to press about better signalization and safety there. Please note that in order to introduce those type of signalization opportunities, it's uniquely linked to retiming. And as downtown has not been retimed in some time, and that's something that both in that road safety audit and for us, we really feel is it has to be a priority for us to be able to welcome new types of functionalities on how we maximize the signal system.
And just to add a little bit to what the Keith said, when we approached DOT on this, it was not only because of that the communication infrastructure, but it also worked in concert with the traffic signal retiming that we just did back in 2016, 2018. Also, the monies that was spent by the city with the traffic management center. And all of this combined with the technology of the traffic controllers and also the DOT project that's going on in West Ashley area with the traffic responsive comes all the way back from this project that began in 2009. And the DOT has provided the bulk of this, the monies that was spent on this, either by monies with the SMA, with the equipment that they provide us, even fiber back since 2009 that we have in stock that we're pulling from to try to complete these projects. Next is the school zone automation project. This was delayed because of COVID. The actual vendor was not able to send anyone out for the installation and training. And we're still waiting on a date for them that they can return. The company will not release anyone out at this time because of the actions of COVID. Hopefully we should get things back in order and be able to get this completed in December of this year. The connected vehicle project, we have been working with IT to iron out some issues. We have that done. So hopefully the contractor will return in August so we can begin this project. This is a pilot project that DOT is aware of, but what it does is have all the signals connected with the vehicles via a app that's on any tablet or laptop that shows the corridor, the speed, and the traffic lights and how they change. Before this is released out to the public, it's going to be reviewed internally by the city and DOT before it released out to the public. The West Edge Flasher project, which was completed back in May, is where we added rectangular rapid flashing beacons at a crosswalk from West Edge to the Joe baseball stadium. Now it can be activated via push button to let the pedestrians across. The artistic traffic cabinet project was completed back in March 2020, where we partnered with the Gibbs to complete cabinets at Meeting Street at Hugie Street and Farley Road at South Windermere. These two cabinets, again, working with the Gibbs and also Keith, we got this project done.
They look great, by the way. You can really see them when you drive by, especially the one on Hugie, and fantastic.
Thank you.
Give you a couple more minutes and we got to roll on.
I will get the traffic signal retiming project. We submitted in the budget again for this year. As Keith said, it works along with everything that we're doing. So this is something that we must get done. Island Park at Fairchild intersection improvement project. Actually, construction should have begun this week, but we heard from the contractor there's been a delay in the sleeves where they're supposed to install the concrete foundation. So they will be delayed by a week. But this project should take approximately 60 days to complete and should be done by the end of September. The flood stat project is also completed. We work with the Emergency Management Center to install flood warning systems. We installed two. One was removed, and the one at Fishburne and Haggard is still existing and it's operating perfectly with sending alerts out via text to TNT and the Emergency Operations Center. And last but not least, we have the replacement of damaged and missing decorative bases. They were either by being damaged or being stolen. We completed all of King Street with funding we received 1 year, but since then we haven't received any funding. But hopefully with some of the SMA funds, we will be able to go in there and do that and also include our regular maintenance of replacing broken and missing shades, back plates for traffic signal, any maintenance that needs to be done on signals as a part of our annual maintenance and inspection for the traffic signal system. With that, I am complete.
Yes, thank you very much for that very complete report. Any questions for Troy or for Mr. Brown? Questions? Looks like you got a lot going on. How's it been managing all that? Pretty tough, huh?
Pretty tough, but it's fun.
Well, good. Well, you're doing an excellent job. Thank you all for all you're doing for the city. It's tough times, but as you can see, we're making some progress, right?
Oh, yes, we are. Thank you very much.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much. Next, Mr. Somerville, application for original certificate of public convenience and necessity, Charleston Car Service LLC taxi.
Yes, we received this request. Legal has reviewed it, and we request approval.
The motion,
Move for approval.
Second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next, traffic calming speed humps for approval, Blue Water Way, Bolton's Landing. Mr. Somerville.
Yeah, this is a long-standing request. I believe we first started studying this back in 2010, and not until this year were we able to get the petition signed by 80% of the residents on the street. I believe in your packet you have the map showing the 24-hour count. We had just under 1,900 vehicles recorded in a day. The average speed of all those vehicles was 30 miles an hour. However, we had about 49 vehicles recorded going over 55 miles per hour. So with that being said, we request approval of speed humps on Blue Water Way.
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
There's a second. Any discussion? My standard question, Mr. Somerville, have we alerted the homeowners who are going to be directly across from these speed humps that they're coming?
Once the locations are finalized between our public service, police and fire, we will notify them.
Okay, and this will be a 2020 project, I take it?
We actually have funding left to be able to do this, and we might have a little bit of money left to do a little bit of maintenance on existing traffic calming after this is installed.
So that'll be the end of our 2020 budget?
Possibly. I'm trying to hold on to a little bit, but possibly.
Make a little money go a long way. Any
sir.
questions for Mr. Somerville on Bolton's Landing? Sorry, Councilmember Brady.
Yeah, no, I was just going to urge approval on that because if you're unfamiliar with where that is, Blue Water Way comes in on the southbound side of Savannah Highway, and the neighborhood is getting used to bypass the main road intersection to go over to Bees Ferry. And so that's why you see the very large traffic volume there is to bypass that intersection to make it over. And so, I've been approached by the residents and was glad to hear when Mr. Somerville let me know that this request was coming. So I just urge approval on it.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Councilmember Brady, you can report back that they're going to get their speed humps. Excellent. So, Mr. Benjamin, I'm going to skip over you just for a sec and come back to you at the end, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
So next is the build grant for the Acity River crossing. I know we have Mr. Most and Mr. Kronsberg on the line. I also want to note for the record, and just generally, I saw Councilmember Appel was on here. I don't know if he's still with us. We're going to keep this on as a regular update on our TNT agenda going forward. It doesn't mean we'll always be talking about it for a long period of time. I think tonight from Mr. Most and Mr. Kronsberg, we'll just get a generalized update. And I think that Mr. Benjamin is prepared at our next meeting to give us a little bit more of a technical update and some details. But this will be something we're going to keep a track of through the TNT committee going forward. So with that, Mr. Benjamin, Mr. Most, Mr. Kronsberg, who do I need to turn the microphone over to?
So I'll take over from here, and forgive me for not having my camera on as I have some crib notes to follow. So I'm going to give everyone a general overview of a very complex and dynamic project. So we were assigned this project in capital projects at the end of January, beginning of February of this year. We brought on a project manager, and her start date was April 8th in which time Terry hit the ground running, learning city processes and delving into this very complex grant agreement with the Federal Highways Administration. So there are a couple different things I'm going to talk about. The first thing is a contract that City Council approved some months ago to get some work moving. And that contract was with HDR. That work has been completed and included some jurisdictional determination of critical areas, a wood stork survey, in addition to some LiDAR aerial mapping creations and some field surveys. So that work has been completed. We are waiting for all of it to be wrapped up and delivered to the city for review. Hopefully we'll have that next week. So that was the first portion of work that came through, and good we got that going. So the next two items, the first.
By the way, did we get the results of the wood stork survey?
Yes, all of that's been completed, and as I said, we're waiting for it to be delivered to us so we can review it.
Awesome.
Right. So the next two items are the grant agreement and the design build support scope of work. So they're kind of concurrently moving forward, and I'll just address the grant agreement first. And I know that Sterling Halverson's been working with Terry on this in our legal department, and it hasn't been as easy as we thought it might be. So we've been having some difficulties getting the FHWA and the SCDOT to all kind of see along the same lines and agree to all of the specific details in that. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there. We're currently trying to reconcile it, and we'll be meeting, weekly, trying to get over the hump on the main grant agreement. Concurrently, we have our the design build support scope of work. So what we did was, working with the FHWA, we selected a consultant team off of the SCDOT's on-call list, which again was HDR, since they had the most familiarity with the project. They worked on the grant application, and they just had the most knowledge of the project. So we selected them with the approval of the FHWA. So the design build support services include 16 different tasks. I won't go through each one of them, but at the end of that task, we will have an RFP out for the actual design build project. So it goes through traffic studies, environmental services, roadway and path design, structural design, hydraulic design, geotech services, utility coordination, and on and on and on and on. So we've ironed out that scope of work. The feds have approved that scope of work. Now the next step is to negotiate a contract with HDR. So, and these are all required stepping stones that we have to go through for the federal procurement. So once we negotiate that work, the feds approve it, then we bring a contract to City Council for those pre-design services. So we've got some milestones in there, all going back to that September 30th, 2021 commitment date for the design build contract to actually build the bridge. So I've got lots of other dates in here. I'm happy to answer any questions. So let's see. So council approval. So yeah, I mean, again, that was in a nutshell, a large and complex project, and more than willing to answer any questions that you may have. I know Edmund's here, and again, Sterling is here as well. Keith might have some insight if there's some other questions that you all have.
Edmund, anything to add on to what Jason just told us?
I don't think so. I think the only thing that I would add is the contract, just to get a little bit into the weeds. HDR was originally procured through a DOT process. DOT typically works with the county, and the county will basically pick up a consultant. So it's very easy to work out those contractual details. That's what's making it a little bit more difficult for us is, we don't have a contract with DOT, yet they're being really, really helpful on this project and they're helping us out and we're using their process, but we're not going to have a contract with them. It's going to be with Federal Highways. So, ironing this stuff out, like Jason explained, that's the difficult thing right now. And a lot of it's just legal stuff that we need to go through.
Sterling, I know you're out there. Is there anything you need to let us know about? Let's see her here. Okay, questions of the committee, from the committee. Councilmember Jackson. You're muted.
All right, maybe we don't have any control, but I would hope we did. What will be the opportunities to bring in minority and women-owned businesses into the contracting setup?
Well,
So
that's
go ahead,
certainly
Jason.
a part to every single project that we do. Whenever we have a pre-construction meeting or a pre-bid meeting, we have our MWB coordinator, Ruth, comes in, she explains the goals of the program, and we stress the importance of it and really how we kick off every single capital project in the city. So, when it comes down to issuing the request and proposals on the design build project, it's up to the general contractors to put together the best team that they can put together. And we really, we stress the importance of our MWBE program. And once we get to the point where we are getting close to a contract, if we don't have at least the goal, the 20% goal, we always go back and say, listen, y'all need to do better. So we get into that little scenario where we really try, and Keith may have some other input on maybe some federal requirements as far as the grant agreement goes.
Yeah, federal requirements are extremely strict with that regard, but I also will say I'll stand in my position and say that I'm adamant that, a project of this magnitude needs to be reflective of the community that's going to be involved, right? If we just look at the data of who's disproportionately affected in our roadways that are walking and biking, we got to make sure that those same folk have the opportunity to be a part of building the infrastructure that's going to make it safer and more accessible. And so that's something that I'm very serious about and want to do. In fact, not saying this is person gets it, but we even just had a conversation just a couple of days ago, Edmund and I, with a potential vendor who's an expert in right-of-way acquisition, who happens to have a minority firm and lived in West Ashley for 20 years, and he and his wife now live in the upstate and want to figure out how they can be involved. So we definitely want to make sure that when you're talking about minority women, veteran-owned businesses, that they have a seat at the table. This is a $20 million project, and got to make sure that everybody has a chance to be involved.
And
well, I'll look forward to having that be sort of a reporting item that on a basis. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I wanted to jump in here too. So I had that conversation with HDR very early on. They understand what our goal is at the city. They clearly understand what the federal goal is, and they've already identified a number of DBE and women-owned subs on the team right now. So that is definitely in process.
Okay. Any other questions for any of the team that's out there? I think one of the questions I'd ask, just in reporting this out and continuing to report this out, I know that you said, Jason, it's complicated, complex, there's a lot of layers to it. I think the questions that we get sort of out there in the virtual highway and we're going to get from council as we go forward is, are we on task? Are we moving forward? Are we on schedule? Are we budgeted? Is this baby going to happen? I mean, I think to use very non-technical terms, that's what's on people's minds, and it's on mine.
I can't speak to the funding portions because I know that's, again, there's city, county, and federal considerations there. We know that the feds are requiring our city, or they have indicated that they were going to require our city funds to be spent first. So that's another complicated scenario that I would have to kind of defer over to BFRC on. As far as schedule, we feel we're a little bit behind getting the grant agreement in place, and we're really trying to get the feds to respond to our request. We've given them everything that we can give them. It's still, we're just kind of waiting for them and to get this whole hurdle figured out with the DOT versus the FHWA contractual relationships. So, we're looking to, if you look at our layout and the schedule, in December of this year, we're planning on advertising for qualifications, and then lots of stuff coming in February. And then, so right now we think we're on schedule as long as we can get these pre-designed services approved and get the grant agreement in place.
Yes, sir. Mr. Benjamin, did you have?
Yeah, the one piece that I think for clarity purposes for folk is that we're the grant recipient of a federal grant for this bike ped bridge. And so our functionalities and what has to be put in place is very different than what traditionally we've done around infrastructure and buildings. And so the fact that the state DOT has stepped up and allowed us to be able to piggyback off of a lot of their processes so we don't have to rehash is extremely helpful. For example, if we were to use our own procurement process, our entire procurement process would have to go through federal highways in DC, get pre-approved before we even move forward with any type of scope. Whereas if we coordinate with the state DOT and utilize their process that's already been approved by the Federal Highway Divisional Office and otherwise, it cuts that time. So, it is complicated. It is something that's new for the city. And so, we want to walk hand in hand and make sure we're giving updates, but just letting folk know that this is a process that we have to follow. And, that's where the difference is, right? When we got the Tiger grant in 2010, we were the direct grant recipient, right? We were working, the funding was coming through the state DOT to us locally to execute on that roadway project. This is different. We're the direct grant recipient of it. And so there's particulars around that we have to make sure that we're checking the box on.
All right, any other questions? I just wanted you to note that the background behind me is actually a sunrise over that bridge, not a sunset. So this is the beginning of all this. So stick with it and give us an update as regularly as you can, because as you know, this is a project that people have a lot of interest in, and it's an amazing project for our community. So Mayor Tecklenburg.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank the team here. They really have been working hard to figure all this out. And from the description you've been hearing, and using those words, complicated and complex, it really is, but they've been figuring it out. And Keith is right. We went and met with Secretary Hall a few months ago up in Columbia. She's very supportive, giving us access to resources that they have. And this is happening. We hired our own project manager. We've already funded that initial bit of work for HDR, and I hope this second piece of it will be coming to council soon. So this is a difficult project, but yes, it's really happening. We're going to make this happen. We have that deadline date in mind to meet all the requirements in time, and that's clearly what this team is working to do.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Thank you all for taking time out of your day to come and give us a report. We'll look forward to hearing more as we go along and giving you whatever support that you need to make this a successful project. All right, Mr. Benjamin, time is short. I know you've got a few things you want to update us on, so have at it.
Yeah, yes. Earlier in the meeting, I had introduced you to one of our new assistant managers, not new to the city, but new to the position. But also I wanted to make sure I introduced one of our other assistant managers as a reminder to you all when you all asked me to take this position on. you asked that we think towards implementation as a department and to be a better sister to planning. And so we're in a position now that every single division has both a manager and assistant manager working both on visioning what their work is supposed to do, but also what operations looks like. And so in our traffic operations that has our signs and markings, obviously Michael Mathis, who's been an amazing employee for us and worker at TNT, is manager there. But now we've brought in assistant manager, Thomas Tisdale, who's here with us, 15-year veteran with SCDOT. He's worked at a number of different local district offices throughout the state. Very versed in how to work with the state DOT, but also where we find common ground too. And so really, really grateful that he decided to not make those 2-hour drives up to Orangeburg anymore and stay down here in our area. He lives out in Mount Pleasant area and coming on with the city. So definitely looking forward to both Parrish and Thomas being able to continue the work that they've been doing, but being a support to the city. Rush through these last three. I have been getting a lot of emails from different council members regarding our work orders and different things you all want to get done in your districts. And so just want to remind you that we have our citywide maintenance plan in different areas that we're in every single month. This past month in June, for example, 207 signs fabricated and over 1,600 linear feet of markings that were done just in the month of June. In July, this month will be in Daniel Island. I'm getting work done. August will be on Johnson James Island, filling work orders. September will be back on the peninsula. October will be in West Ashley. November will be back on Daniel Island, and December on James and Johns Island. So just giving you all the heads up on the months that our crews are following our work order process and making sure we're very responsive to your constituents. The other piece I wanted to raise, and obviously this will be going to county council, their full council quite soon this week, but wanted to give you all the heads up on some amazing news. We got the report out from the finance committee from Charleston County on the transportation sales projects that are going to be awarded, and hopefully these move forward unanimously at the full council. But as you know, the finance committee is a council of the whole. So wanted to give you the heads up on the projects that are coming down the pipe. This is really a testament to the coordination with Charleston County Public Works staff. Got to give them the shout out. Our coordination has really been sound and they've been amazing partners with us. So the North Bridge Bike and Pedestrian Improvements Feasibility Study, the Folly Road and Fort Johnson pedestrian upgrade. So in line with Project 700 with SCDOT, doing enhancements there for pedestrian signals and crosswalks and otherwise. Both the St. Philip Street and also Cumming Street mid-block crossings near the Greenway at the college. These both have been asks that have been out there, Chairman, for a long time. And so grateful that those are moving forward. Romney Street bike lanes, that's immediately a part of our People Pedal plan that you all approved back in 2018. Courtney Drive and Dowdy Street, if you remember from Troy's report out, there are some areas in the downtown peninsula area that have upgraded fiber. That's one of the intersections. So we'll actually be coordinating with the state DOT and MUSC to introduce all PED phasing at that intersection, right at that Greenway. Ashley Ave and Congress, if you know anybody on the west side, they've been asking for that intersection to be, that entire corridor of Ashley to be much, much safer. And so excited about the funding that could be coming down to improve that intersection. Stocker and Chadwick Drive on Savannah Highway, and also Nicholson, both of those areas. But we did, again, a shout out to the coordination with Charleston County Public Works staff. As you know, the US 17 corridor study is moving forward. And in our conversations, we had asked them about, some low-hanging fruit opportunities that were in that study to kind of link planning and implementation together. And so both of those improvements were kind of low-hanging fruit that were in a study that's going to be coming out to the public for review. And we went ahead and asked to get funding for both of those, and they went ahead and funded them. So excited about all those projects. Prayerfully, they get fully approved in the full county council, but wanted to give you all the quick update. And the last thing I'll mention to you, Troy made mention of the Project 700, the improvements that are going around signalized intersections and making sure they're as safe as possible, things that are happening off the peninsula and on. We did get the cosign from SCDOT to continue with that project with them this year, with 4 intersections on the peninsula, Rutledge at Cleveland, coming at Vanderhorst, coming at Radcliffe, and coming at Morris. And so that won't be happening until their second quarter. But the way the partnership happens, the city takes up the ownership of the signal plans, paying the money for the signal plans, which comes from our signal maintenance agreement dollars. And then SCDOT steps up with funding both for the infrastructure and installation there. So went through that really quickly, but just wanted to make sure I gave you all those updates.
Once again, amazing number of things happening in a difficult time. Thank you. Any questions about anything we've discussed over the course of the last 1 hour and 4 minutes, or 4 minutes beyond? I see that Troy has transformed himself across country over to San Francisco, so congratulations. Any questions? All right, if there's nothing else for the common good or the good of the Traffic and Transportation Committee, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned and see you all in just a little bit.
Thank you. Good meeting.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.